Day started in the dub. Camera? Camera? YouTube, say hi YouTube. Brought my speed demon child with me. Every morning before I go to work, well, kind of on the way to work, always like run a log on this one road. It's like right when the car is like fully heated up, right before I'm heat soaked to death after my 20-minute journey. So I pop in my JB4, look up my app. The IATs are. So at the very current moment, we're at about 77, which is normal. It'll get up to like 90 honestly by the time I get, you know, going here. But the car's fully heated up, so I always drive over this road here, which goes on to Black Horse Pike. Opens up the 2 lanes. Today there's kind of some cars though, but talk a little bit about JB logs. So JB4, you have a logging ability since everything taps right into the OBD, and I have a USB cable that runs from the JB4 to my phone, which I have a Samsung S8. I know some phones don't work with it. I know a lot of the Apple stuff. I think the Apple phones you can work with the USB cable, but as far as the Bluetooth goes, I think that's all the iPad can use is the Bluetooth connection. But basically, when you run a log, George prefers you do it in 3rd gear because you can get pretty low down in the RPMs without getting kicked down. I have a DSG, so I do suffer from that when I'm running logs. It's pretty hard to get down into the lower RPMs and still be able to mash into the floor. The car instantly wants to downshift. Basically what I do is I'll start from you know, a stop at a stoplight or something. Obviously you want to be first in line. And then I'll just kind of granny shift through 1st and 2nd, and then I'll shift into 3rd. Probably down around 2,000 RPMs I'll be in 3rd, and then just gradually increase the throttle until I get to about 3,500 RPMs, and then mash it, so I won't get kicked down. Mash it down and then blow all the way through 3rd. You can get a 4th gear pull too, you know, go through your shifts, go all the way through 4th, and then after you shift into 5th, that's when you want to end your log. So you want to get, you know, the full gear worth of reading from it, you know, as high up in the rev range as you can, because depending on if, you know, what car you're rocking and how your tune's set up, you may or may not see your torque fall off at the end. Now with the Golf Rs, with the JB4 tune, you really don't see some, you know, it drops off, of course, everything drops off, but it doesn't have any major drop off like some other cars. So you pretty much ride the whole rev range out. I've come to the conclusion that with the DSG models and their gear ratios, for torque, it seems to be, you want to shift around 6,300 RPMs going into the next gear. Pretty much with every gear, it might change. I mean, I kind of calculated it down to the T almost. You know, I had to pull out the nerdy math for it, but it seems like 6,300 is the sweet spot as far as how the torque's going to be in the next year, and if it's even worth redlining it, which 6,300 would not redline this car. This car seems to redline at about 6,500, but if you let it shift by itself, it shifts more around probably 67, 68. So yeah, that's how you would run a log. And then what you'll do, I mean, if you're comfortable enough using it and you know what you're looking for, like I've kind of gotten used to it, you could do the tune yourself. You know, you're basically just pro tuning the car, depending on your modifications that you have already on the car, is going to really, in this sense with the Golf R, limit you as to, you know, how much boost you can push. Because it's not as optimum, I guess you could say, as a flash tune would be. Because, you know, in the flash tune, you're essentially controlling all the variables with the tune itself, whereas the JB4 is basically it's really only controlling the boost and the you can mess with the fuel trims a little bit. Berger really doesn't recommend you doing it with these. The fuel seems to not be an issue as much as you would see on like a BMW with the JB4, where they do have to mess with fuel trims a lot. But yeah, so you pretty much, if you do have a JB4, when you go into your user settings, you'll see the fuel bias. That should always be set at 100 unless you are running a stack. So if you're stacking the JB4 on top of a flash tune, those will start off at 0. Pretty much everything starts off at 0 when you're stacking it on another tune. Just so, you know, you're not over boosting or doing anything crazy at first, and then after you run logs, then you can move things accordingly. But yeah, so they set it about 100 on the fuel bias with just the JB4 on the Golf R, and our stock boost pressure is around 17-18 pounds, give or take. So there's two ways of looking at a JB4 as far as the user settings page goes. You're gonna see some guys that you'll see like numbers from 1 to 5. So, and then you'll see other guys with actual boost targets. Like what I use is actual boost targets in my tunes, and then you'll see, you know, you'll see 22 pounds, you'll see 23 pounds. Whereas the other guys, you're basically, so the guys that you see that have 1 to 5, they're not running 1 to 5 pounds of boost. They're running 1 to 5 pounds on top of the stock boost. So if you see somebody with a user setting like that, where it's just ones to, you know, 1s, 4s, you know, etc. to 5, they're putting that on top of their stock boost. And that's the same case with the GTIs too. I still don't know exactly what stock GTIs run boost wise. I do plan on hook up the JB4 to my GTI and see what it you know, what the reading it gets is. Because the performance package GTIs, everyone says, oh, I'm running 29 pounds of boost. You're not running 29 pounds of boost. You have to account for a few more things that you know, boost gauge with the premium package or the performance package is actually reading. So no, you're not running 29 pounds of boost from stock. They say you're supposed to subtract like 14 to 15 pounds off of that number to see more realistically where you're at, which if you did that, you'd be around, they seem to be around 14 to 16 pounds, but I still have no like accurate for sure. Alright, so a couple other settings that you have under the user adjustments. So you have a boost failsafe, which basically means you just, you know, you basically set the maximum boost that you want the JB4 to allow to happen. So if you ever get a boost spike, it'll kick it back into map 4, which is your stock tune, you know, map. So just to not run the risk of doing anything hazardous to the engine, that is what it does. So that's boost failsafe. Next you have, you see, some of these don't apply to the Golf R. So if you do get the JB4, you might notice some of these things. You're like, what the f is that? So they don't all apply. But so fuel open loop, this setting has to do with the fuel trims when you are in wide open throttle. I don't know specifically what this exactly does. I know it has to do with your fuel trims. I do have to look into it a little bit more. But when I ran my initial logs when I first got the JB4 and sent them over to George, that and the boost failsafe was the first two settings George had me change. So right off the bat, now mind you, I did this, I probably sent him my first logs, it's probably about 80 degrees out, so it was hot, so we didn't want to let that boost go too high, you know, to account for intake air temperatures being extremely high and causing a lot of timing corrections. So we set the boost failsafe at 26, but now the second setting you had me change was that fuel open loop to 50. It was sitting at 60. Now, some people like seem to have like an okay time running at 60, and then some want to change it to 50. Some are told to change it to 50. Some are told to go upward. I guess it just depends on where you live, and I guess how different aspects of the environment you're at is affecting you. And I guess each car, you know, obviously has a little bit of difference, so it might be one of those minor settings that just helps with that kind of stuff. Yeah, so if you are a do-it-yourself kind of guy and would like to pro-tune the car yourself rather than going through George, which I don't necessarily recommend. I do a lot of the tuning changes myself as well, but I still like to check in with George from time to time when I do see kind of slight weird things, or if I, you know, plan on running ethanol, or if I plan on, you know, hitting the track and it's going to be certain temps, and I want to know if I can maybe kick it a little bit at the top end, and then he'll let me know if he thinks it's safe to do. So it is good to check in with George from time to time, but for you do-it-yourselfers, I will look into that fuel open loop setting a little bit more to see, you know, how turning it up would change it and how turning it down would change it, that sort of thing. So I will let you know. And then, so what has now become one of my more favorite settings is you can boost by gear with the JB4. So you can set your max boost in first, second, and third. Now, what it's basically doing is it's taking your user set tune and it's just limiting it to whatever the max boost pressure you put into these spots. So if it's at 0, this means you aren't boosting by gear, so you're getting the full punch of your tune every single time. But now what I was experiencing with my DSG is, off the launch, I was experiencing clutch slip pretty bad. So since I was experiencing the clutch slip, I was like, all right, let me try, you know, I was talking with my buddy Jeff, and I said, you know what, let's try it. Let's limit it. Try to do this without the TCU tune to increase the clutch clamp pressure. So I limited the first gear boost to 19 pounds, which is only 1 pound over stock. So to me, it meant, all right, you're getting a little bit more power than, you know, you would have on the stock tune in first, but first gear's so short that it's not really going to hurt it, and the clutch slip is going to hurt your times way more than that little bit of extra, you know, air going in for a little bit more power. So because the gear is so short, so all I did was I limited first to 19, no clutch slip at all, and the car ran its fastest time that I've been yet to, you know, that I got so far. So I definitely like that setting, and that's, you know, the fact that you can do that without having some crazy tune or you know, crazy valves sensing boost pressures and all this shit, but that you'd have to hook up aftermarket. It's, you know, it's kind of nice to be able to do that right from a tuner. So yeah, that's boost by gear. You could do that in first, second, and third. I guess if you are getting into crazy numbers, you might have to, and you know, if you're in a GTI with front wheel drive, you might have the need to boost by gear in second and third as well, rather than just first, like the all-wheel drives. Underneath the boost by gear, I don't think apply to us with the Golf R platform. You know, for the do-it-yourselfer guys, me myself, I talked with George about it, about the fuel bias. So the fuel bias is the AFR bias. So it's you're changing your fuel trims essentially. So I was having a point there where I thought I I was leaning out basically, around 4,500 RPMs. It seemed like every single time I ran my logs. And as I put my boost up, it got even more lean. Come to find out, I did another pull. You know, I kind of rode through all the gears a little bit, so to see what it did in the other gears, like while it was already in it, instead of me like, you know, easing into it and mashing it down and like causing, you know, some kind of changes there on the spot. So I ran through all the gears and discovered that it was definitely getting leaner at a certain point, but once it got into it and it was just you know, roaming through the gears, it wasn't leaning out. You know, at one point I thought I was hitting 16, 17 AFRs, which is terrible. But, you know, you're running the risk of leaning out the engine and you know, frying something. So I was worried about it. So I was like, you know, George, is there something I could do with the fuel bias to account for this? But he had me go out and try a few, you know, more logs, do them a little bit differently, and come to find out it was really just a spike due to the sudden slam in throttle at one point. It just was happening so, I mean, essentially it's milliseconds you're talking, but I felt like it was happening so late compared to when I was mashing the pedal, so that's why it worked. But to those do-it-yourselfers that are looking into the fuel duty bias, or the fuel bias, that is the AFR bias that will change your fuel trims, but it's not recommended by Berger unless you have a reason for it, which they would want to determine. So they're not gonna, they don't recommend you changing it at all on your own. Send in your logs, you know, send them into George and Berger. If I imagine when you're starting to stack and running bigger turbos and utilizing the JB4 after the fact, you may come into situations where you need to change your fuel trims on the spot. So that's what that's for. But yeah, definitely if you plan on messing with that function, run a few logs, send them over to George, get a good baseline tune going, and then, you know, he'll determine if it's actually going to help or if it's even necessary to do that type of thing. If you want to see the screen by screen by screen, I have another video. It was a JB4 tour, so I take you through each individual screen, and you can, you know, get a look at what the screens look like and what kind of functionality the JB4 has, especially through the app gauges. So since we are running logs, you might, you know, depending on yourself personally and what you really care about seeing when you're running logs or when you're out just racing the car around in general, the various things that you can take a look at. Now, some of these don't apply to this car, but just to get a taste of what the JB4, if you are looking at this video from another platform, you can, on your display screen, which displays all your gauges, you can get things like RPM, boost, ignition 1 is your overall timing. So you'll pretty much always want to be looking at that. And then your 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 5 is, you know, when you do pop a correction, if you experience timing pull and you want to see which cylinder is correcting itself, your 2 is your first cylinder, and then 3 is the second cylinder, 4 is the third, and 5th is the 4th cylinder. So when you're running logs, you'll see that the throttle kind of bounces up and down. That is your throttle compensating for the extra boost that it keeps hitting, and then when the boost drops below your target boost, it, you know, increases the throttle to let more boost back in again. So it kind of, that's how it rides the line of your target boost. What else we got? So once you plug it in like this, you just hit the connect button. It'll talk to your JB4, establish a connection, and then you start seeing this kind of stuff. So right now I have my RPMs up, my ignition 1, which is my overall timing, my IAT readings, which are extremely high right now, my air to fuel ratio, and my water temperature, plus my boost gauge. I don't bother to have the actual target boost gauge up because I can see that pretty well in the logs afterwards. Alright, so I'm just going to hop on the highway here and give you a taste of how you want to run a proper log. So if you can see right here, that's your start logging button. So that's basically what you're going to hit to tell the JB4 app to start, you know, logging. The only part that sucks, and you know, as soon as the log's over, as soon as you get past those RPMs, in order to see it like on the graph nicey nice and like not have all this spare info that you don't need, you got to stop the log at the end of your run. At the end of your run, your ass is pushing 100 plus. So especially if you take a 4th gear pull and you do a third to 4th log. All right, so right now I'm in 2nd gear. I should probably show you the gear too. But anyway, I'm in 2nd gear right now. I ease it up and I ease into 3rd. Now I hit my log start right before I start easing into 3rd gear, and then I hit it when I know I'm not going to kick down. At the end of the log, before you kill anybody, you want to stop the log and try not to crash. Obviously, the most ideal road would be, you know, something that's wide open or a highway that's got minimal traffic. The only issue that you run into with this car, especially in the summer, is the longer you drive the car before you do your pulls, the more heat soak you're gonna have. So in order to get a proper reading, you know, without heat soak becoming an issue, you have to do it, you know, almost as soon as possible. So if you don't live by the most optimum road, you really need to be careful when you're running. You're never going to be able to run a successful 2nd gear log because you're going to kick down every time, because it's just what it is. So 3rd gear is pretty much where you got to go to run your logs. So like I said, you want to start as low as you can in 3rd. When I start my 3rd gear logs, I get the rev sitting at about 2,500-ish. I hit my start logging button, and that's when I start to ease in to full throttle, so I don't get kicked down. If you slam it right away, at least in the Golf R on a DSG model, you're kicking down. You're going to kick down immediately. As soon as you hit the peak of the throttle, it's going to kick down on you. So you need to ease it in to kind of let it know, like, all right, we're staying in this gear. Don't downshift on my ass. At the end of your log, as soon as you don't want it to log anymore, you got to hit the stop log button. After you're done running your log, you go back to the export tab. You click on the most recent. You can also see the date and the time. Do a couple things from here. So once you got your log, if you want to see it, you're going to hit graph. Now I'll explain. When you first get your JB4, you're going to hit your log, you're going to hit graph, and it's going to say, no, sorry, error message. Reason for that is because you're not going to have any of the kind of settings ticked off that you wanted to display on your log. So things like boost, actual boost, or I'm sorry, target boost, actual boost, you know, your IATs you can display, basically all the readings that you can display on that display screen with these meters here, you can display on your logs afterwards in a graph type form. So anyway, let's go to export. Let's go to that recent log we just ran. I hit graph. So these are the readings that I tend to look at. So now you'll see this red line here. That is, let me just make sure you guys can see here. I'm gonna have to go in a little closer for this one, but anyway, this is where you will look at your logs. So I'll do a closer up view in a couple minutes here to get you what this log looked like, to show you what essentially I'm looking for. Now, when I just ran that log, I'm a little heat soaked, so I'm not gonna have the best, you know, readings on that one because the IATs are skewing the results. But I'll show you what the graph looks like and a couple of the readings that I tend to look at, and the ones that I feel on the Golf R at least actually, you know, matter in the scheme of things when tuning with the JB4 from a non-stack, non-methanol standpoint. So that's how you successfully run a log. You know, you're gonna grab the JB4 if you are looking to either run a stack for methanol on top of a flash tune. If you're looking to retain warranty, as the JB4 can be, you know, installed and removed roughly in 15-20 minutes. Once you know how you're doing it, first time it might be like 45-minute install. So you can take it on and off without having any visible signs and any watermarks on the ECU. Head on out, grab a JB4. I recommend it to everybody because it doesn't go to waste. Even if you decide to go with a flash tune, you can still stack it, so more power to be had. Methanol injection for those guys that are looking to go full E85. You got that on the back end. You can't go wrong with it. Customer service is unmatched. George gets back to me when I send him an email, always within 24 hours. Sometimes he'll even get back within a half hour. So great guy, great company. They are developing, you know, a lot more for the Golf R now, meant to pair well with the JB4. So yeah, and then other than that, I would say keep on dubbing.
Can't fuck with me.